Welcome back, everyone. Pete and I are back at it. I know you enjoyed our December talk that we did. And we are here because it is the new year. And Pete shared this wonderful article with me like a month ago, talking about how about 80% of the New Year resolutions that are made deal with either fitness or finances or health. Pete's your financial guy. I am your nutrition, health, and fitness girl. And we are here to drop some good insights that I actually do think, Pete, that people will take some really good, useful, practical things away from what we have to say.
I hope so. I hope so. Some of this is just sort of back to basics for many of us, but sometimes we just need that reminder, right?
We all need the basics. I actually catch myself. I realized one of the reasons I love doing what I do is because when I get a new client, I have to educate them on the basics, and it forces me to never forget the basics.
It's so true.
Yeah,
Yeah.
people don't realize I'm helping myself when I help them.
Yep.
All right, so I am going to be talking about four common mistakes that I see people make when they jump back into the gym after a little hiatus, a holiday hiatus, if you will. And Pete, if you want to share your topic, I'll share my information first, and then I know you're going to be getting to yours after. But what are you enlightening us on today, Pete?
Just a handful of must-dos if you want to kick off the new year right, some things to think about when it comes to your finances to help you achieve a milestone in your financial journey. So, what are some of the things that you find when you talk to people about getting back to the gym? I know you can't just go from 0 to 100 when you go back to the gym after a little bit of a break.
Well, you know that, but most people don't know that.
Hmm.
It turns out when I'm talking to friends or family and they're like, "All right, this is going to be my year. I'm going to work." And I'm like, "Okay, what's your workout schedule like?" Or like if a new client comes to me, I always ask them my intake form. How many days per week are you working out now? And then, how many days per week would you like to work out going forward? And I can't tell you how many times I see like 0 and 1, I'm working out now, and I'd like to work out 6 to 7 going forward. I'm like, yeah, about that. That is mistake number one, is going 0 to 100, because your system needs time to adapt, and it can also be very taxing on the immune system. The body needs things to happen in a gradual progression. And there's something called the open window theory, which is where you get like a temporary immune system suppression. And a common question that I get asked a lot, because during this time of the year, it's cold outside, people are getting sick more often. People are always wondering, hey, can I work out while I'm sick? And it really depends on the intensity of the workout. Can you go for a walk in the sunshine while you're sick? That sounds like a great idea, unless you're like severely sick and in the hospital. But if you're sick and you want to go do like this hardcore leg workout, that's probably not a good idea. That's going to cause a little bit more wear and tear and immune system suppression on the body. But Pete, I know like you and I have gotten to know each other, and you're quite the fitness and workout enthusiast. Like, I don't know if you want to just share a line or two so people can understand, like, this is actually a subject that you know an awful lot about too.
Well, I know that you need to listen to your body, right? So getting back to your point, if you're feeling a little under the weather, but you feel like going for a walk, you feel like getting a little bit of fresh air and sunlight, you probably could and you probably should, frankly, do that. But there's a huge difference between doing that and, to your point, going from 0 or 1 workout a week to 7 workouts, going from walking down the block to to pick up something at the supermarket versus doing 7 days a week of high intensity interval training, right? There's a huge distinction there. And I think for those who might have had chapters of their life where they were particularly active, I think probably the hardest thing to overcome is that your brain is not on the same page as your body. Your brain thinks it can do 7 days a week workout, but it doesn't realize the toll that it's taking on your body, right?
Yeah. Oh, and I could go on and on about how that was me all day. Like, I sometimes failed to realize, like, oh yeah, I can just work out 7 days a week indefinitely and be fine. I had to learn that lesson the hard way. So now I'm a huge believer of prioritizing rest. And I tell my clients, I say, hey, if you getting your workout in today means you have to only sleep 4 hours instead of 6 or 7, and you have to wake up super early to, make that happen, I would say don't. I would say sleep and try to plan better next time so that you can sleep and work out. But I would prioritize sleep over the workout. And then throughout your day, you can see if you can. One of my favorite things to recommend to people if they have like a super busy day is pick 4 times throughout the day where you just get up and you do a 1 minute burst of exercise. It could be jumping jacks. It could be, if you're really feeling like champion that day, burpees or mountain climbers, or, just marching in place intensely, holding dumbbells and doing, some elbow to knees. But doing 1 minute bursts throughout the day is so powerful, like for our mental health, for our digestive health. It really is an amazing way to like squeeze in a workout and a great way also to ease back into it. You might, a couple days per week do something like that instead of a full-blown workout. Just a thought for people.
Lindsay, I have friends who say that they're going to get into it. They're going to go running every single day. In fact, you can probably speak more to this, but there's that like workout routine of running every single day for a year. Do you know what I'm talking about? I actually have a bunch of friends that are doing it.
Yep.
And I know from personal experience that there is a level of diminishing returns
Yeah.
if you simply go out 365 days in a row and run the exact same course.
Yeah.
Maybe over time you get a little bit faster,
Mhm.
but there is a level of diminishing returns over time. Can you speak to a little bit about that?
Oh, yes. First of all, there is no Olympic caliber professional athlete whose trainer would ever have them do that. And these people are the best of the best. Okay.
Yeah,
That should be the end of the conversation right there. But let's
right
talk a
there.
little more about human psychology. Humans love all or nothing, myself included. But
Yeah,
actually understanding human psychology has helped me to break away from some of my bad habits. Some are a work in progress. And I'm sure there's bad habits that I still have a blind spot to that I'll learn down the road, right? But we have this all or nothing mentality. So some people are like, okay, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to really do it. And for them saying, I'm going to run 365 days per year, it like charges them up. It gets them excited about it. And who knows, maybe the benefits of that can outweigh the cons of overtraining. Who am I to call them out on it, right? But I 100% agree. And actually, that's going to go into tip number two. Tip number two is don't double dip on muscle groups. And we can first, I'll say this from like a workout perspective, but it does apply to running as well. So your muscle groups need about 48, sometimes 72 hours to repair and grow after you induce tears to the muscles. And when I say induce tears, I mean that it sounds scary, like, oh, you tore your muscle. But no, that's actually what needs to happen for you to make progress with your fitness routine. When you're going to the gym, you're lifting weights, even when you're running, you're using those leg muscles, you're making tears in the muscles. And the magic happens. You don't benefit unless those tears that you created heal and repair. Imagine if you had a scab on your arm and the wound is starting to heal, it's scabbing, and you just go in and you start like
cutting
sandpaper
yourself.
the
Yeah,
scab. It's like it's gonna really prolong the healing process, and your skin would heal so much better if you just let it be. And if you look at any bodybuilder, like I come from a bodybuilding background, and I mean, pretty much any bodybuilder, or at least any bodybuilder I know, we isolate muscle groups. We have a leg day, we have a back and bicep day, and we don't have leg day and then the next day have another leg day, right? We have a leg day and then at least 3 days of rest before we do another leg day. So, and yeah, that for sure I would say applies to running, but you can what I did when I trained for a half marathon, this was years ago, but when I did that, I would have lighter recovery run days
there
and then
you go.
some days that were more intense. So you might make the argument, okay, if you're doing something like that and one is like you're very conditioned and one of the days is just like a super light run and it's just like activity for you. That's
Sure.
different than being like, doing something intense every day. So, there's always the gray area, right?
So go to maybe doing a recovery run or hill runs or sprints, but of course, what I hear about are the people that go out and they try to run 2 or 3 miles the exact same course every single day. And to your point, someone who's in very good shape could probably do 2 or 3 miles every day because that could literally be like a warm-up run for them. But if you're looking, you know, to the more to the folks that might be going from like couch to 5K, right?
Right.
They're going to definitely need their body to recover and definitely make sure that they're not overtraining their muscle groups.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
so sort of to that point, overtraining your muscle groups, there's a debate about whether or not to work out fasted, work out with a snack before, what should you have? as a pre-workout? And then after a workout, what should you eat? What form, like is liquid better than solid? So on. Is that something that you can speak to?
Yes, this is one of my favorite topics. I have a section on this in my ebook about intermittent fasting, or fasting in general controversies, and I paired it with ketosis. I have a section in there
Yeah.
for both of that. So let me do a quick science explanation, and I promise to make it relatable, and I won't go too far in the weeds with this, but I think this
Oh,
is
darn.
concept. I know if you want me to go more in the weeds, I can. But we'll start kind of with a higher level overview. All right, let's talk about cortisol. Cortisol is the stress hormone. Actually, Pete, what do you know about cortisol? I'm going to put you on the spot, but I know you know something about cortisol. So let's just see what you know about it.
Yeah, no, I know that it is the stress hormone, and I know that there is at least all over social media right now, there seems to be a real big push on cortisol detox, right? And that you don't want too much cortisol running through your system. So I'm not going to steal your thunder. I'm going to let you explain what you want us to know for this segment.
Okay, great. Well, I'm laughing because I hear cortisol detox on social media. Social media is a huge source of cortisol spikes in people's lives. So maybe that's
Exactly.
the cortisol detox is get off social media.
Yeah,
As we post this podcast on social
on
media.
social media,
Very
right? So
hypocritical of us, but
do
hey,
as we say, not as we do.
right, exactly. All right, but yes, cortisol is known as the stress hormone. Apparently, it's getting a big buzz on the IG and these days. But here's what you want to know about cortisol. If you were to map out someone's cortisol rhythm, and I do this with, certain clients of mine that I think are that would benefit from this test in the doctor's office I work in, we will sometimes run a salivary cortisol profile on someone and have them, they'll either pee on a piece of paper or spit in tubes throughout 4 points of the day so we can map their cortisol. What should happen in everyone is you should get a spike of cortisol in the morning and it should gradually come down for a nice smooth landing at night. Cortisol is what revs you up. It's inverse to melatonin. So we know that melatonin makes us sleep and it gives us good deep sleep that we need to heal from a workout. Think of cortisol and melatonin like a seesaw. When cortisol is high, melatonin is low, and vice versa. So if the average human, well, most humans that are functioning right, every human that's functioning right should have high cortisol in the morning. All right, so let's say you wake up and you do a workout fasted. Well, cortisol, what else you have to know about it is a catabolic hormone. It means it breaks down tissues. The role of cortisol is to mobilize your body to like prepare for like fighting or, the classic example is running away from a saber-toothed tiger in the old days, when we needed to save our lives. This is a primitive thing that's built into our bodies. When cortisol spikes, we're supposed to be able to like fight or use our muscles. So it's catabolic, meaning it breaks down not only muscle tissue, but other tissues in the body. It releases glucose into your bloodstream because glucose is the starting substrate to produce energy, which is ATP. How does this relate to working out fasted? Let's say you're working out fasted. When you're fasted, that can be a form of stress on the body. It depends on how your body perceives stress. I will tell you for females, it tends to work not in their favor. For men, men can usually, due to metabolic differences, usually get better results working out fasted than females. But it also depends, are you going through a stressful time in your life? So cortisol is high in the morning, you're fasted, the cortisol is going to break down muscle tissue or glucose and dump it into the bloodstream. Now, if you
As fuel. It's going
as
to use that as fuel. Yeah.
fuel, if you have eaten, it will use that and spare your muscle tissue. If you haven't eaten, you're going to convert your muscle tissue into glucose. It's a process called gluconeogenesis. It happens in every human being. And so what we find in the research is when we compare not only intermittent fasting, but ketosis, when we're looking at people who are doing ketosis and I'm going to emphasize the word intense activity, because there is a difference in the substrates that your body uses for intense activity versus less intense activity. Less intense activity, aerobic activity, it can utilize fats, amino acids, and carbohydrates to convert that into energy. But if the body needs quick energy through intense activity, it needs glucose. It needs glucose or creatine, which is why sometimes people supplement with creatine. But because it needs glucose, basically, if you haven't eaten, if you don't have glucose in your bloodstream, it's going to convert your muscle tissue into glucose. So the research does find that people that work out fasted have suboptimal muscle building results or increased muscle breakdown when they're either working out fasted or when they're doing a low carb ketogenic style diet. And not just like, okay, so I think like a low carb diet may not necessarily like cause those same issues, but if you're doing like super low carb, a ketogenic diet, 80% of your diet's coming from fat and you're only getting like 5% carbs, then we're talking about that conversation. So Pete, did I make any sense there? Or was that like
That, I
too
mean,
much?
no, and I'm sure that many of our listeners are going to like all of that science. I, of course, loved it, but let me ask you a practical question.
Mhm.
For those of us that like morning workouts, so um, we're going to fall in the camp where some people really hate us because we get up before the sun, we work out before even the sun gets up. Um, and many of us might, and I will just admit, I do my morning workouts fasted.
Mhm.
So when you talk about eating before working out, clearly my dinner at 7 o'clock the previous night
Mhm.
is not in my digestive system in such a area that my body could pull on that for
Mhm.
fuel, right?
Yep.
So you're talking about a snack that I may have eaten 20 or 30 minutes prior to getting to class, right?
Okay, I'm gonna tell you what I tell people in your situation. Obviously, I'm not gonna suggest you eat like this 500 calorie breakfast 30 minutes before you go work out. That's
Right.
not a good idea for you.
No,
So here's where I start. All right, Pete, you actually seem to be in really good shape. You seem like you are happy with the results that you've achieved. Would you agree with that, or would you be like, yes,
I
I
would agree.
I probably wouldn't change it. Now, if you wanted to optimize things, you might experiment with an amino acid supplement, which can protect your muscles. And when your body does need to convert amino acids into glucose, it will pull from that supplement rather than your muscle tissue. So, an
Which I've taken 20 or 30 minutes before class.
amazing. Well, maybe this is why you have such good results,
No,
right?
no, no. I'm
Oh,
saying if I took it 20 to 30 minutes before
oh,
class, then
yeah.
I would be pulling from that. Yeah.
Yes, exactly, exactly. Like even 15 minutes before class, that could work.
Hmm.
Um, or even if you're like, oh shoot, I forgot to take it, I'm about to start class, that could even work because it's like you're going to be working out for the next however long. So even if it takes a little bit to get into your system, it's really like the end time where you're going to be more catabolic. So yeah, I would take it even right before the class, but ideally, maybe 15 to 30 minutes before. And this is why I love customizing things for people. For you,
Right.
maybe I wouldn't change much, but I would say, hey, let's do an experiment where for a month you take an amino acid supplement before class. Like if you have a goal of either improving your body composition, adding a little bit more muscle, leaning out a little bit more, if any of these are goals of yours, or like if you're having negative symptoms later in the day, like blood sugar crashes, or you're having like this intense hunger later in the day, if you're having any negative symptoms that you're trying to fix, that's where we start. But like, I realized I'm like, why am I going to try to make a problem out of something that's not there?
That's not a problem. Yeah.
Right. So, but let me give you another example. Most of my clients that come to me, like they're trying to lose weight or add more muscle,
Hmm.
and what they're doing for them isn't working. It might be that your body can handle stress better or that you don't have as much stress as some of my clients. But if what they're doing isn't working, if they're working out fasted, and we change this, I am telling you, when I start with people, that's usually the first place I start is getting them to eat protein throughout the day and getting them to eat before a workout or do an amino acid supplement. And if they're not going to do a full meal before a workout, do something that's easy digested, like egg whites and a banana is, easy digesting protein and a great carb source pre-workout. And it works. It works. Like I could show you before and afters of a client where that was like one of the main changes that we made and it worked. So,
And it worked. So we got into this talking about some of the common mistakes that folks make when they're going back to the gym after a long hiatus. One
mhm,
of the things that always catches my attention at the gym,
mhm,
and of course, these are people that I don't know, but I see people sort of walk out of the locker room with me, and I'll see them walking out onto the workout floor. We're sort of getting there at the same time, and they might peel off to the weight machines, or they might peel off to the cardio machines and they go full blown. Like they are sprinting on the treadmill, they are lifting way heavy weights. I don't see any type of like warm up or sort of getting the body aware of the fact, all right, we're going to be doing some stuff right now. And I think about how my body would rebel
Yeah.
and just hate me if I did that. And I often wonder how their body's reacting. What are your thoughts on the idea of like warming up and like getting the body into the mode of working out?
It is very important. Do you see those same people on crutches a week later?
I often wonder, no, but like I think, how are you doing this?
Yeah. Well, okay, to be fair, some people need way more of a warm up than others.
Hmm.
I'll just share like an anecdote, which is never a replacement for like advice for what everyone should do. But
Right,
I feel like my body doesn't need a lot of warm up. I
right.
do warm up still.
Yeah.
Sometimes though, my warm up is as simple as if I'm like, going to my first machine, if I'm lifting that day. I might, just do a little marching in place, pumping my arms and go super light on my first couple of sets. Sometimes that's the extent of my warming up, but
But super light is enough of a warm up, right?
yes, yes, it can be. But I'll tell you, I have some clients that like they have some shoulder issues, not to the point where they can't do anything, but they have some issues. For those clients, we make sure before we're doing anything upper body, we're doing some of this.
Hmm.
We're doing some of this, we're doing some of
Hmm.
this. And I'll tell you what, on the days that we don't do it enough, they'll be like, ooh, it felt a little weird on that set. I'm like, okay, before we go into the next set, we're going here. They're like, oh my gosh, I'm great. And like I see it play out. So the general recommendation is you do dynamic movements going into a workout for before like to warm up. You do about 5 minutes, maybe 10 if you really need a lot of warm up. 5 to 10 minutes of dynamic movements. You don't want to just do a static, still stretch. You want to move, you want to bring blood flow to the area. And that can actually really help people with their gains. It can help them get better results faster and, of course, avoid injury. And I mean, I've actually never, so I say like I don't really warm up as much as maybe other people do, but I do enough. I've never had an injury. I mean, there was one time where I was running and my foot, I ran over a big stone and twisted my ankle, but I've never had like a workout injury. So I
Well,
guess for
I
me.
will admit that 2024
Mhm.
was the year that I introduced real warming up segments into my
Good.
workout.
That's,
So, and in retrospect, I think that my way previously was just sort of doing a light set. So even if I started like on the treadmill, maybe I would start a quarter of a mile or a half a mile an hour slower than what I would wind up going at.
Mhm.
But now I'm getting on the treadmill and for about a tenth of a mile, I'm basically speed walking. And then for about 2 or 3 minutes, I'm going at a slower running pace for a few minutes before I get into my actual running pace. And I did it as a function of an injury, as part of recovering from maybe overtraining,
Mhm.
and it just has cooperated. And I'm getting better results. So why change it? Like I know up here it's the smart thing to do, so why don't I do it, right?
Yeah, no, that's great. I think we're all becoming wiser over the years, right?
It's true. It's
Yeah.
true.
So Pete, I've also, in talking to my clients, of course, they tell me what their goals are for the new year. Like, all right, this
Mm.
year, this is what I want to do. And then actually, I had the honor of a lot of my clients telling me, hey, I actually accomplished the New Year resolution that I set last year.
That's
Hardly
awesome.
anyone says that, right? So I was like, oh my gosh, this is really cool. I actually I like starting the year on that note. And now, okay, what do you want for this year? But a lot of people, as the survey pointed out as well, also have financial resolutions. And
Wasn't it interesting how many of those over 80% of those participants identified either fitness or finance?
yeah, yeah, not surprising, but it kind of is like how high of a percentage that is. Like people need us, Pete. Like they need us in their lives to like guide them on these things.
I agree. I agree. Yeah.
So, all right, so someone comes to you, I'm sure like, well, actually you tell me, is January a time of the year where like your season gets really busy or what is your busy season?
I'd say pretty much from January through November. I'd
You're
say
like,
right
oh,
now, yeah, I mean, I think that people finances are an interesting thing with people because different things will trigger them to prioritize finances. So this time of year, it could be those who are preparing for taxes, and we're going to get into that in a moment. In springtime, it could be those parents that are getting ready to send kids off to college and they're doing the financial aid packages and they're sort of looking at their finances, or maybe they had a tax bill in April and paying that tax bill took a little bite out of somewhere that they were counting on that money for somewhere else, and it's getting them to focus on it. Um, Tuition bills in the fall, so paying the fall tuition over the summer will often highlight someone's finances, and then going into the holidays. Um, Pretty much from a week or so before Thanksgiving until now, it's kind of quiet because folks are like, "Oh, I'll deal with that another time."
right.
The one exception to that, and unfortunately, our office has seen a fair amount of this in the last few months, is when there's a death in the family.
Yeah.
And that will immediately bring finances to the forefront. So what I'm talking with my clients about now,
Mhm.
and in fact, I have a whole separate podcast conversation on this topic of preparing for your taxes. So just a few things to be thinking about now, if you want to really get proactive on your finances for 2025, is make a list of the tax documents that you're expecting to as you get ready to meet with your tax advisor, or if you are using one of the DIY programs and you're going to do your own taxes, just make a little inventory of the documents that you're expecting. So if you have an employer, if you're going to get a W-2, of course, you're going to be keeping a lookout for that. If you have investment accounts, after-tax investment accounts, not your 401k, not necessarily your IRA, but I'm going to come back to that. But if you have investment accounts, you want to keep a lookout for 1099s. So have you had any capital gains, any interest that have paid out? With regard to retirement accounts, if you did a 401k rollover to an IRA, that might have generated that likely generated some 1099s and 5498. So you want to look out for tax forms there. If you've taken distributions from an IRA, you want to keep an eye out for those documents as well. So just be thinking about the institutions that should be sending you tax documents, and keep an eye out over the next 4 to 6 weeks to make sure that you get them. Different account types have different deadlines set by the IRS for when the documents need to come out. With regard to a death in the family, or a death, or let's phrase it this way, to the extent that you inherited any money from someone,
Mhm.
and especially if it's a retirement account, there are some IRS imposed guidelines on how that inheritance is to be treated depending on your relationship to the deceased. So you're going to want to get with your financial advisor if they are someone who's allowed to talk about taxes. At my last firm, I was rather restricted on what I could cover. At my current firm, of course, part of the reason that I broke away is to be able to talk with clients about those things that they need to know about, like, I inherited this money from my uncle. What do I do with it?
Yeah.
And how do I handle it? And when do I take money out? And is there a way to mitigate the tax consequences of that? And so understanding that is really important. One of Go ahead.
Oh, I was just thinking as you're saying that, I'm like, it really is like a game. And if we can understand all the fine print rules of the game, we can win a lot better. Like you've shared some things with me that helped me tremendously in like being more strategic with my investments. And I know we'll get to that a little bit later, but I just, every time I hear all these rules, I'm like, what a game we play, right?
For for those who are working with a financial planner for the first time, what usually is eye-opening for them, and I'm drawing a distinction between a financial planner and uh, a financial advisor, or what used to be known as like a stockbroker, right? When you're working with a planner, you've got a plan, and that plan is sort of directing you towards an investment strategy that makes sense for what you're trying to accomplish. And for those who I have found in my practice are working with a planner for the first time. The biggest shock to them is I'm not going to tell my clients what to do with their money.
Mm,
They earned the money, it's their decision. My job is to show them the consequences
mm,
of the decisions that they're making. Real
mm,
life example, uncle passes away, leaves you $100,000 in a retirement account. You're
mhm,
like, oh my God, this is a godsend. I'm going to take that $100,000 out. I'm going to pay off the credit card debt. I'm going to buy a new car and I'm going to remodel the bathroom.
mm.
Cool. Problem is that $100,000, you have to pay taxes on it.
Oh, okay. Hmm.
So if you don't withhold taxes,
Hmm.
and let me put in a caveat, on the assumption that it's coming out of a pre-tax retirement account, if it's an after, but again, this is why you want to speak with a professional so that they can say, this is what, this is what you can and cannot do.
Hmm.
So if you've gone out and you've spent $20,000 on a bathroom, $20,000 on credit card debt, and $60,000 on a new car, you have no money to cover the tax consequences
Right.
of that inheritance, right?
Yeah.
And if you're doing that in November or December of a given year,
It's gonna come quick.
it's going to come quick, but B, you could have mitigated the impact of that by splitting it over 2 years, right? Like chances are you're not going to have that bathroom remodeled in the middle of December um, of 2024. So
Right.
why not take that money out in January 2025 when you need to pay the contractor,
Right.
right? Do you
Yeah.
need to buy a car? It doesn't make sense to buy a car in 2024. Do you have to do that then? Like, let's get a game plan. Let's get our facts. Let's understand the rules and the consequences. And then it's up to you to make the decision of what you want to do. And kind of to that point, when you list out what your goals are for 2025, when you think about your financial goals, and they could be some big ticket expenses, like you'd like to go on a vacation, you want that new car, you want to remodel that bathroom. Maybe you're thinking that you want to retire this year, change careers, and you want to be financially prepared for that. Then you also want to make a point of listing out your debt to the extent that any exists. What is your debt? How much is outstanding? What is the interest rate? What's your target time frame for paying off that debt? For example, did you buy a whole bunch of new furniture for the dining room and the family room that has 0% for 18 months? Well,
Mhm.
when is that 18 months over?
Right.
Right? Because you
Yeah.
want to get that paid off by then. And what's that monthly payment looking like? So
Mhm.
that you can factor that in to your spending plan.
Mhm.
What are you spending money on? I hate, you've heard me say this, I hate to use the phrase budget. Budget to me just feels cringy. It's like restrictive. It's like the word diet. I just don't like the word diet. I'd rather have
Yeah.
a meal plan,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
I purposely don't use the word diet because I know there's a
Yeah.
lot of negative connotations. So
Hmm.
yeah.
So what is your spending plan?
Mhm.
And then when you know what your goals are, when you know you've got the goal of that vacation, you've got the goal of buying that new car, doing that home improvement, it might give you the opportunity to look back at your spending plan and choose to reprioritize certain expenses. It might give you that little impetus to meal plan to bring your lunch to work versus ordering in or going out every day for lunch because you know that that savings is going towards the vacation,
Yeah.
right? I can't tell you to do that. Who am I to tell you to bring in a PB&J sandwich versus going out every day for lunch?
Don't tell him to bring PB&J. Tell him to bring chicken and broccoli.
Who am I to tell you to bring chicken and
Yeah.
broccoli? But you see my point, right?
I
But I
get.
can show you that if you save, and it is so easy just on lunches alone, you can save 50, $60 a week, right?
Mhm.
And so that's one of the things that I will suggest that my clients do to prepare for a financially healthy new year to get off to a good start.
Really about like
And
laying out the numbers, isn't it? Like
it's all about the numbers.
you have to sit down and just lay out the numbers. I mean, that's so key. Most people don't, huh? Well, I don't
Not
know.
only do most people don't, it's the hardest, it is literally the hardest part of financial planning. I would say over half of the clients that I work with absolutely hate the spending plan portion of the planning process.
Yeah.
For a
Yeah.
lot of them, it's because they've gotten themselves into a reasonably good financial situation to where their outflows are less than their inflows.
Hmm.
But still, when they do take a look at where the money is going, when they do take the time to truly take a look at where money is going and they see how much they could potentially save,
Right.
I mean, in some cases, it could be an incremental vacation during the year. It could be an incremental weeks of vacation. It could be upgrading from economy to business class to travel to Europe. It could mean the difference of you name it. And so if they see the impact of their spending, it will help them reprioritize. For a lot of families where they might have been coming up the career path simultaneously to starting a family and raising children, the idea of being able to save for retirement has been a challenge through their 20s and maybe early to mid 30s, maybe late 30s. And so now they find themselves in their later 30s, early 40s, and they are where they are financially, but they also have more income than they had, and they want to try to catch up on their 401k, and they don't totally under or whatever retirement plan they have, and they don't fully understand exactly how that works. One of the most common questions that I get is, how much should I be saving? Well,
Hmm.
the number is different for everyone, right? It depends on what kind of retirement you want, when you plan to retire, but the simplest answer that I give everyone is the IRS limit. So for 2025, if you are under age 50,
Hmm.
the limit that you can contribute to your 401k, just you, not you and your employer, just you, is $23,500.
Okay. Okay.
So that's almost $2,000 a month. For
Hmm.
most people, that's probably not doable. But
Hmm.
how much should you contribute? I'm going to say $23,500 because there's not one client of mine who has ever complained about having too much money in retirement,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
you are over age 50, you can contribute an incremental $7,500. That gets you to $31,000 per year. So if
Right.
you're over age 50 and you're really trying to push as much money into your employer sponsored plan as possible, it's $31,000. And there's even more ways to put money aside. It depends on their individual situation, but you could do even more. However, the most important thing, and I see this way too often, is
Hmm.
when folks are leaving what I call free money on the table. So
Hmm.
if your employer is matching a contribution, you want to at least be contributing enough
Yeah.
to capture all of that free money. Real life scenario from a meeting last week. The gentleman's contributing 4% to his employer sponsored retirement plan. The
Hmm.
employer is matching dollar for dollar up to 6%. He's putting in 4%. He's leaving 2% on the table. That's free money. The company wants to give him 2% of his salary if he would just contribute it to the 401k.
Yeah. Yeah. Man.
And when you multiply that against his compensation, that's some real money.
Right.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'm like, do I really want to be self-employed? But
Well,
it has its benefits. So
yeah,
yeah. But that's nice. That's those matches of free money. It's a nice deal right there.
it is. It
Mhm.
is. And it's part of, and look, it's part of the compensation package, right? So um, when folks are looking at going out on their own, we have to weigh or changing jobs. So a
Mhm.
lot of times I'll talk to clients about job offers because benefits packages could be completely different, and that includes the retirement plan match. It also includes the retirement plan itself.
Now,
And go,
oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
go ahead.
All right. So speaking of as much money as you can into your retirement fund, how do you balance that with, okay, you need a certain amount of money for an emergency fund? I'm
Mhm.
sure like that needs to be factored into the equation, right?
Saving into an emergency fund, cash on hand,
Mhm.
should be part of every spending plan. So when you are looking at your spending, whether you pay a mortgage or rent, if you have a lease payment, a car payment, insurance payments, groceries, saving.
Mhm.
because you never know when something is going to hit the radar screen.
Yeah.
So in our practice, folks pass away, you need to book a flight to go cross country to a funeral, last minute flights, lodging, rental car. I mean, that adds up. And
Yeah.
yes, you can throw it on the credit card for the duration until your next statement, but the objective is not to carry that balance and to pay interest on those expenses. So you want to have a couple of bucks in the bank. And for these last couple of years, we've been in an interest rate environment where for the first time in a very long time, we're actually earning interest on savings accounts, right?
Yeah.
And in fact, going back to a previous conversation, if you make more than $10 in interest on your high yield savings account, one of those financial institutions that you should be getting a 1099 from is your high yield savings institution. Again, if you made more than 10 bucks of
Oh, wow,
interest.
it's that
So
low. I didn't realize it's
mhm.
only $10, huh? Because it's like I think I remember if like you win like a contest or something like that, if it's like over, it was like a couple thousand. Do you know what I'm talking about? Like,
the I the IRS is not in the business of making things easy.
yeah,
So
right?
there's different rules for different things. But yeah, and that's why you always want to share financial situations with your advisor, at a bare minimum, your tax advisor. I mean, if you really have no human to go to, Google, but
ChatGPT.
ChatGPT, but you do want to speak to a professional just to make sure that you know what the rules are as it pertains to your windfall of money. And I think that also having that in your game plan, having that emergency savings lined up, and contributing to it sort of in parallel with your 401k. Now, let's face it, not everyone is in a position to be able to save to the emergency fund, save $23,000 to a 401k. Some folks are in the process of achieving uh, their debit or their credit card elimination, their debt elimination. And so hitting all of those things while still trying to pay the bills, that's where having your plan and exploring your plan and coming up with a strategy really makes all the sense in the world. And what's a lot of fun to witness is those, and I have some clients that really geek out in Excel. They will not only put out their spending plan, they will then track their expenses month to month to month. Now, I love that they do it because they are so incredibly engaged in the planning process that
Mhm.
I know we're going to hit their goals
Yeah,
because of how engaged in the process they are.
yeah.
But it can also be a little bit of data overload,
And
and
if
it can be a little bit much. But again, kind of to your point, if it's working for them, if that is the process,
Mhm.
then run with it. There's another reason to have a emergency fund, and this always catches people off guard, and it has been increasing over the last few years, and that is your health insurance deductible amount. The
Mhm.
deductible amounts have been increasing over the years.
Mhm.
And while some folks are saving to a health savings account, and even some employers, depending on the employer and depending on the benefits package, might contribute some money to that health savings account, it doesn't mean that you're going to have all of that money at the ready when you need to pay a bill to meet your deductible, right? So that's where that savings account really is so important.
Yeah, that actually happened to me. Luckily, I did have enough saved, but just a couple years ago, I was pretty open about the surgery I suddenly had to get. And it was a big chunk of money that I had to
It
pay
is.
that deductible. So I was like, okay, here we go. But luckily I had enough saved. But I actually had to make a lot of life changes around that. So yeah, it's that's no joke. And you don't expect it. Like I remember the day I got the news, I was like, I did not think this was gonna be my day. Like you don't expect those things, but
No,
they happen.
it does.
Yeah.
So those are a lot of the things that I will talk to folks about as we go into the new year, to get on track. I think talking with a professional, having a certified financial planner that you can work with to lay out your plan, lay out your priorities, um, if you need an accountability partner, that individual should be able to be there with you to help you get there. What can be accomplished in a calendar year is sometimes really amazing. When you've got, I mean, what I've watched some folks do over the course of 12 months is really pretty incredible. So
Yeah.
having a plan, asking the questions, just having conversation. Think about, Lindsey, think about the conversations that you and I just have, just hanging out, talking,
Mhm.
and how we wind up into this deep conversation, and one of us will have an aha moment on a topic like, oh my God, I didn't realize fill in the blank, right?
I
And
didn't
that's
realize
what,
I should take amino acids or have a banana and egg whites before I eat. Well, actually, no,
who knew?
settled,
I did know.
we settled on you actually may be fine just to keep going.
I think so, right?
That's where we settled. But no,
But
100%. You never know what you're going to learn from these kinds of conversations. Hopefully,
abs-
people listening gathered at least one helpful nugget, one
yeah,
helpful health and financial nugget from what we had to offer. Pete, if people do want to get in touch with you, I'll put your information in the show notes.
yep.
I'll put both of our info down there. If you want to share anything right now, by
Yeah,
all
just
means, the floor
feel
is
free to reach out. I'd love to have a conversation with you, understand what you're trying to accomplish. And if there's an opportunity for me to bring value to what you're doing, we can talk about what that would be. But if nothing else, maybe just hear from you what you're thinking about. You can call, email, text, whatever works.
such a nice guy. Very good. Yes, and I will extend the same offer to people. I do free 15-minute calls. Sometimes, people just need that little something to push them in the right direction. Sometimes they do need more, customized help. Either
Yeah.
way, I'm here for it. I open my schedule up to be able to accommodate a few of those per week. So that is on my website, NutriDayFitness.com. If anyone is interested, I'll put that in the details below.
And you can visit our website at guidedcapitalwealth.com.
Great. That will be in the show notes too, in the description box. Awesome. This was fun. This was a good way to kick off the year. And I actually really loved what you said about you'd be amazed at how much progress can be made over the course of a year. That's sometimes when people feel like they're just in such a hole or they're in a faraway place from where they want to be. It's like, can you imagine what can happen over the course of a year if you really are consistent, not perfect. Not every day needs to be perfect, but consistent. So we'll leave
Over
everything.
New Year's, over New Year's, I was talking with someone about where we were 1 year ago
Oh yeah?
and what we have done this well, during 2024, and
Yeah.
to think what each of us had done
Uh-huh.
through calendar year 2024, and are we going to be able to do the same thing in 2025?
Yeah.
So
Wow, that's quite a thought. I mean, I got a master's degree this year. I don't plan to get another one next year.
yeah,
So
one might be enough for
yeah.
now.
Well, I have two.
One additional one, right?
I don't want a third one at this point. I'm happy with my two. I might go on for my doctorate in nutrition at some point, but I need to start, not working for free for a little bit. I consider school working for free,
Yeah.
so I need to stop all that. But yeah, it's incredible what can be accomplished over a year. So we'll leave everyone with that pleasant thought in their head, and Pete and I will be available as we write in our little show notes description. But thank you, everyone, if you're still here with us. Thanks for
Thank
listening.
you. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, everyone. Oops.